Welcome everyone to the Health Matters podcast, first episode of the 2024-2025 season. We got your boy J-Rock right here bringing everybody in. Just want to introduce, we got Nate here. We also have the illustrious Dr. Preventure, and also we have Tyler. Let's get things started. Let's start off with the PUP players of the season right now. What you got here, Dr. Preventure?
Yeah, J-Rock, welcome to the podcast. Great to have everyone here. Coming to you, Vail, Colorado. Check out the scene, everyone. We're going to be bringing you everything, all right? We got injuries, we got performance, we got analytics. You're going to want to stay tuned to what we've got because it's going to help you perform better. So we're going to roll through, J-Rock. You asked about PUP designation. There's all these designations in the NFL going on now. And, what is PUP? Well, it's physically unable to perform. And there's a bunch of that stuff going on. There's a huge formula that teams have to go through to figure out in terms of how they play this overall. But it's evolved really after the 2022 season. COVID played a lot into that in terms of how players were managed because you didn't want to have all these players in injured reserve or being out for a few weeks for COVID, et cetera. So some of the PUP and IR rules have stuck now. But basically what happens is if you start the season on PUP, you got to be out a minimum of 4 weeks. And you can come back. There are a certain number of players each team gets. It's basically 8 players. And you're able to return anytime after 4 weeks after you get to the 53-man roster. And so there's a bunch of players that will get on PUP that are recovering from injuries from last season. Big injuries, ACLs, right? Tyler, we got some big knee injuries, bigger ankle things going on. But usually it's ACL, knee injury that puts people on PUP to start.
One of our first players on PUP that we'd like to talk about is Nick Chubb. He's been a huge contributor to the Browns offense ever since he got drafted from Georgia. What can we expect at the start of the season and his time frame for coming back?
Yeah, so Nick he had a big knee injury, ACL, MCL, meniscus, the meniscus capsule, which is where the meniscus attaches into your knee to keep it stable. But he basically had 2 surgeries, and we do this quite a bit. Why? If you have a bunch of things injured in the knee, you do your first surgery, you get that rehab for a few weeks, and then you do the second one. He's going to be back sometime this season. I don't know when. We're going to have to watch this closely, but this is about a 9-month injury in my estimation from his second surgery. So that's going to put him out still quite a ways, right, until at least a few more weeks to get him back.
Yep.
Yeah, we also got T.J. Hawkinson for the Minnesota Vikings, torn ACL, MCL, Week 16 against the Detroit Lions last season. How do you think about him? How do you feel about him coming back?
Yeah, J-Rock, similar thing. We're looking at about 9 months to get these players really ready for what we call get back to NFL activities. And even with that, I mean, they can go to the meetings, especially on PUP. They can go to the meetings. They can participate in team activities. They just can't participate in practice if they're on PUP. So you get off PUP 4 weeks into the season, they'll make another assessment, but it's a minimum of 4 weeks in the season if you're on PUP. ACL, MCL, Week 16. You get surgery at the end of December 2023. So you're looking at 9 months, which is probably mid-September, late September when they're starting to ramp things up. Last thing you want to do is bring a player back before they're fully ready. And what are they working on, guys? It's their core. It's their hamstring, their quads, their core strength, what they call proprioception, reaction time, the ability to do lateral movements without any differences side to side, etc. There's a lot of stuff that goes into this to make sure players are ready to come back.
Doc, Tyler Higbee also tore his ACL, also against Detroit. Detroit was taking kneecaps, like they said. But my question for you is, when you look at someone like Nick Chubb, and then you look at guys like T.J. Hawkinson, Tyler Higbee, what's the difference in position when they're coming back from an ACL? Is it faster for a tight end, do you think, than a running back?
a good experience with Gronk when he was on the Patriots. One of the best tight ends in the league. Going to be all pro player. He's going to be Hall of Fame. And you look at that, and you look at a guy even like Gronk, who's so conditioned. It's still about 9 months, any way you slice it. Now, that being said, a guy like Gronk a guy like that could come back reasonably early in the ACL recovery game. But, the problem with tight end is you're just covering a lot of field, Tyler, right? You're covering a lot of left, a lot of right, a lot of forward, a lot of backward. And that's what they've got to get ready for. And that's the hardest thing to come back from after the ligament injury.
Jonathan Brooks towards ACL in college last November. Do we see him having a breakout season maybe after this is all done, or do we think this is going to kind of really affect his future performance?
Yeah, so coming into the draft, it's always interesting after ACL. We don't see those perform. If you look at our stats, again, check it out at thepredictors.com. We've got all that information there for you. After ACL tear, especially coming into the draft, you don't do as well, especially the first season. You got to be more seasoned NFL player to really get back that first season. But even that first season back, Tyler, what are we down in terms of production offensively? You're down 18, 20, 25% in offensive production any way you slice it.
Yeah, you're usually down quite a bit, and I think that's what made Breece Hall's comeback from the ACL last year so special. We don't see that normally, right? You've only seen that really in the guys like Adrian Peterson and those special cases. So to see him do that was super special, and now we're going to see if Jonathan Brooks can follow in his footsteps or if he goes along the normal trend.
Fantastic. So that's a little roundup on our physically unable to play players, but let's get into who is returning, who's coming back. Let's talk some quarterbacks here. Tyler, Anthony Richardson, AC joint last season. Do you think he's going to come back strong, or do you think he's going to come back with a little bit of timidness?
Well, J-Rock, I drafted Anthony Richardson to my fantasy team last night, so I'm going to go with he's going to do fantastic just for my own benefit. But yes, he had a grade 3 AC joint last year in his throwing shoulder, week 5, missed the rest of the season. But he's been looking pretty good off season, struggled a little during preseason games, but I think he's going to be back. We all know that he's a dual threat as well, so he can use his legs on that field, and I think he's going to come back and do well. I'm interested to see how the Colts do this year with him behind center.
It's interesting, with the AC joint, and especially in a quarterback, everyone's worried about this, but he had a high-grade injury. It necessitated AC surgery. Virtually almost all AC joint injuries in the NFL are non-surgical, and the NHL for that matter. Why? Because they're not super high grade, or they're just very well tolerated. And you can work through it. You got a lot of muscles around there to stabilize all the scapula and your AC joint. But you're worried about Richardson, given as a pretty high grade, the stability of the shoulder. I don't think it's going to affect his throwing at all. You got good stability, if you got good healing in that area, which is generally the outcome after surgery. It just takes a while for recovery, and he's had tons of time now to get ready, because this is an injury you can start ramping up around 6 months to really start whipping those throws downfield. So I expect Richardson to have a pretty good season.
Doc, does it change based on rookie versus veteran if you're looking at that? Because he was a rookie last season when he did it, do you think the team is more likely to push for surgery to give him a longer career, or does it not matter? It's just the injury is the injury.
Yeah, I think you have to be careful when you talk about pushing for surgery, but you certainly talk about, the player's health and, the team, medical staff, the team physicians. Tyler, the first thing is you have to be about the player's health and long-term outcome. And that's the most important discussion is there a long-term play here for the AC joint? And is it something that's going to plague him chronically through his throwing career? And he wants to obviously have a long career in the NFL. So I think that was probably the biggest decision-making. What's in the best interest of the athlete at the end of the day?
Talk about that LSU legend Joe Burrow's calf injury early on in the season. Then we all saw that wrist injury. How do we think he's going to do? Come back explosive?
I think Joe's going to be just fine, J-Rock. I think he's had plenty of time to rehab the calf. Problem is, there is a chance of him getting re-injured. Once you tweak that calf, it can get re-injured. It's just like the hamstring, although not as bad. Hamstrings are the quicksand of the NFL these days, but calves are not far behind. And our data, again, at thepredictors.com shows this again and again, that the calf is a big problem. The wrist, I think, is going to be fine. Scapholunate ligament injuries and getting that fixed, no problem for him getting back for throwing.
Another big name quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, towards Achilles last season, first game of the year. What can we expect this year going forward with that recovery and time frame for his comeback?
Yeah, well, Tyler, didn't we talk about him coming back in December last year anyway?
There was some murmuring about it.
No, I think, but we predicted correctly so that he would not be back, and the reason for that is calf muscle strength. If you look after Achilles, your calf goes down to like the size of a stick. He's got a big calf and needs that for power and pushing off and mobility in that quarterback position, even for a mildly mobile quarterback. So he's had a lot of time in the offseason to build this up. I think it's going to help him a lot recover, and shouldn't be a problem for him at the end of the day. So I don't see any significant loss in offensive production. Maybe a touchdown, maybe a few percentage points down in overall running or rushing yards, but that's not his strength anyway.
Let's take it down to Atlanta, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Kirk Cousins, also an Achilles injury. How do we feel like he's going to come back and do for the Birds?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. We're rounding up a lot of injury years here, guys. There's a lot of stuff that happened last year, and it was one of the highest in the league, in 2024. For kind of these season-ending injuries, and this is just another one with Kirk Cousins, and in high-profile players. We did a story on that, the number of high-profile players that got injured last year with big injuries, and this is just another one with Kirk Cousins. But again, expect him to come back really well. We'll have to see how he does down in Atlanta. They got a lot of challenges down there, but hopefully they're righting the ship, and it's going to be a good season for Kirk. I don't see him being limited in terms of his Achilles at this point.
Love to hear that. Also, we got Daniel Jones, signed for $160 million last year. Season did not go the way they planned for it to go. He ended up pulling out an ACL and also a neck injury. Do we think Daniel Jones is going to come back with that power and that ferocity?
Yeah, so, week 9, 2023, had that injury, ACL. I think he's gonna be back, but I hate to say this, Giants fans. I think his injury proneness plus recovering from two pretty big situations going on in 2023 are gonna be a challenge for him this year. I don't expect him to be a top offensive performance. I don't know, Tyler. What do you think? We spent a lot of time on Daniel Jones last year. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, problem with Daniel Jones is he's had a couple bad neck injuries, so I'm worried just about how much he's going to be able to play if something like that happens again. I think they're very quick to remove him now, and rightfully so. Obviously, the ACL adds a little bit to that, but I'm more worried about the neck stuff if that's prolonged and happens again, kind of like Tua with his concussions down in Miami. You really worry about that kind of stuff because that's a little bit more serious than just the knee injury.
Yeah, and definitely with Daniel Jones, he got sacked 30 times. If that O-line's not going to be able to keep that strength up and keep him from getting those touches and getting those hits, that neck injury could definitely flare up and become a problem for him. So hopefully they can make it happen. They do have Tommy DeVito in the back, but let's see that Daniel Jones can maybe make that happen. Let's talk Justin Herbert here. Right index finger fracture, plantar fascia back in July. Do we think he's going to come out and make it happen?
I think Justin Herbert's going to be fine. He's got this index finger fracture. Those heal reliably well as long as there's good alignment. It's not going to be a problem. We saw the videos very up close during that last season when he got injured that finger. Plantar fascia, though, those can be tricky. And for a mobile quarterback like him, the push off, the power, I think he's going to be fine. There is a chance he gets a re-injury or a calf injury or maybe, I don't want to say it, an Achilles. These all go together. Why? Because that whole kinetic chain is linked through that plantar fascia. So I'm hoping he doesn't get hurt. If he doesn't get hurt, he should be fine. I think it's going to be a little bit slow go the first couple games for him, but I think he's going to be fine as long as he doesn't get re-injured. But there is a chance he's going to get re-injured.
All the way from Clemson to Cleveland, we got Deshaun Watson, right shoulder fracture. Do we think he's going to be able to come back and make it happen?
Yeah, Deshaun's going to be just fine. He had that break in there, had to get it fixed, and when we see these fractures he had in the shoulder, they generally do very well. So that's healed up now, and he's just going to be fine.
Let's talk about some players to watch this week. We got Jacoby Brissett. He's won the week 1 start over Drake May. Do we think he's going to keep that starting spot, or do you think that Drake's going to kind of step up and show him what we got?
Jacoby's a starter. What do you think, Tyler? Back to the homeland of the Patriots. He got the starting nod, but the Patriot fans won't tolerate moderate performance. Let's put it that way. So we could see Drake May sooner than later. But Brissett's a good player and just needs a good offensive line behind him, which has been one of the issues in New England. And the last few years, they got to get an offensive line to help Brissett out.
I agree. I do. If you listen to Tom Brady and what he said, I think that Gerard is doing the right thing. Let Drake May kind of learn, have that year if he gets the full year, but at least a few weeks to kind of get into it and really learn the position and learn the speed of the game some in the NFL before you throw him in. I think too many coaches are on the chopping block nowadays, so they just throw in their quote unquote saviors, these rookie QBs, and they don't get the chance they need, just like Tom said. So I like what Gerard's doing. Let Drake May learn and come in when he's ready.
Yeah, it's definitely a smart move. Brissett definitely a lot more experience of a player. Let Drake get his time to just learn, hang on the sideline for a little bit. Let's talk Bryce Young. What do you think about that, Tyler?
Yeah, well, I always am rooting for Bryce Young as a fellow Bama alum, but last year obviously struggled a lot. Terrible offensive line. This year, they've strengthened that. They've taken the necessary steps to give him some protection. He's got Chuba Hubbard behind him. Of course, we already talked Jonathan Brooks, who's starting on the PUP, but will be behind Hubbard when he returns. And they have some good offensive weapons out there at wide receiver as well. I think that Bryce Young is going to have a bounce back season a little bit. I'm not saying they're even going to make the playoffs, but I think they will be much better than they did last year, and I think Bryce Young will do well.
Let's talk Breece Hall. Huge season last year after his ACL. Do we think he's going to continue this momentum?
Yeah, no question. Breece has already shown his incredible resilience, recovery, DNA, all of the above. He's gonna have a breakout season, no question. I hope you put him on your fantasy team.
I think it's only going to help having Aaron Rodgers back too. You can't just stack the box with Breece Hall running the ball up the middle. So now you got to spread them out. You got to watch Aaron Rodgers throwing wide. And so I think Breece Hall is going to get even more chances, which is scary to think about.
All right, Nate, give us a little rundown on Brandon Ayuk. We finally got that contract locked in, a lot of off-season drama. Do you think it's all going to play out well for him, or do you think he might just flub that money?
I do. I think keeping Brandon Ayuk was a great decision by the 49ers and for Brandon Ayuk. I think that the Niners, they're in a very tight Super Bowl window right now, and they want to win now. And I think the best way to do it is to have Brandon Ayuk on the outside. So there was a lot of drama in the offseason, but I think it's going to play out for them.
Steelers are pretty close to get him, but at the end of the day, 49ers stepped up, which I was actually quite surprised. It seemed like a done deal in Pittsburgh, but we'll see. We'll see how he does. I think he's a good one to put on your fantasy team as well. He's had a great season.
Nate, can you tell us about CeeDee Lamb for a little bit? Do we think that's going to be huge for the Cowboys, or?
I do. My team Blob, we just picked him with the second overall pick last night. So he was the top fantasy player last season. There was some contract drama with him this offseason, but they kind of finally got it figured out. He got an extension for 4 years. So 135 recs, over 1,700 yards last season. I think he's going to go for another big productive season.
Fantastic. So that's going to be our players to watch. You never know what's going to happen. That's the beauty of football. But let's talk a little bit about this fantasy right now. We got some injury breakout players. There's nothing like coming back from an injury and showing the game what you got. Nate, tell us about Tank Dell.
Yeah, Tank Dell, he had a broken fibula last season, which cut his very impressive rookie season short. On top of that, he suffered a shooting wound back in May. But regardless of these injuries, he's expected to be back fully week 1. Doc, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, Tank's going to be fine. That fibula, no problem in the ankle, not even going to feel it. And then I think the shooting wound is, the internal injuries. That'll heal up fine already. And obviously we've seen that in preseason.
All right, Tyler, can you give us a little rundown on Mike Williams? How do you think he's going to be? Big target this season or no?
Yeah, I do. Williams is coming back from an ACL, and we know how hard that can be. He's been a little injury prone in the past, but he's on the Jets now. He's gotten away from the Chargers. Obviously, Justin Herbert, when he was on the Chargers, he had a good to great QB, but now you have Aaron Rodgers, who's proved it over and over again on the Jets. He's a huge target, big end zone threat. Obviously, teams will be watching for Breece Hall. They'll also be watching for Garrett Wilson. So now you got Mike Williams out there. Might not draw all that number one wide receiver kind of heat. Play a similar role that he did with Keenan Allen back in the Chargers. I think he's going to be good. I think they're really going to like him in New York, and I think he's going to get some pay dirt. So he's gonna get in the end zone and get you some fantasy points if you got him on your team.
That's what we love to see, racking up those points. Let's talk Christian Gonzalez. Torn labrum last season against Miami. Do we think that's going to affect him, or do you think he's going to come back stronger, ready to go?
I am so excited to watch Christian Gonzalez. Obviously, cornerback, so not too worried about fantasy football, but when he played against Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle last year, who obviously we all know went off, he allowed just 3 catches for 32 yards. He also had an interception for a touchdown himself in that game. He was only able to play 4 games before getting hurt and not returning, so he is going to be a huge player on defense for the Patriots. And for a team that we don't have too much to cheer about right now, and we're not all that excited because we know we're in a rebuilding year, it's going to be fun to watch him.
Oh, yeah. Love to see some explosive plays in the field. Let's talk Mark Andrews for a second here. Cracked fibula last year. Car accident off season. Absolutely explosive before everything went down. He played in 10 games back in 2023 before missing the remainder of the season with that cracked fibula. He did rack up 45 passes on 61 targets for 554 yards and 6 touchdowns. The Ravens no longer having Odell Beckham Jr. on their roster. They're going to be looking to get that ball into someone's hands, and I think that he could be the man to make it happen. Zay Flowers and Andrews are going to continue to be the top 2 options in this passing attack, but as we all know, it's going to be a little bit hard to come back after an injury, but I do think that Mark Andrews will be able to make it happen. Let's move on to some games of the week. Nate, who you got for the game of the week this week?
All right, my game of the week, pretty obvious, Ravens-Chiefs. The Chiefs beat the Ravens in the AFC Championship game last season, 17-10, which was brutal for the Ravens, who were looking to still secure their first Super Bowl victory in a long time. But the Ravens have also added Derrick Henry to their offense, which, just adds another threat. You have Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson running the ball down the field. I think those are 2 pretty good options. So I like to see the Ravens win this game.
Absolutely fantastic. You got 2 fantastic quarterbacks just going at it. Lamar Jackson just absolutely wily in the backfield, breaking tackles like it's his job, which it is. Tyler, tell us about your game of the week. Who you got?
Oh, J-Rock, give me the Texans versus the Colts, baby. That's the game I'm looking forward to. We got C.J. Stroud. We know how he did last year. He's got so many weapons to go to. When you look at his offense, they have freaking Joe Mixon. They got Tank Dell. They got Nico Collins. And now they add Stephon Diggs to that squad. Colts have a bottom 10 defense, so look for some scoring. But then on the Colts side, you got Anthony Richardson back. We talked about him earlier. Josh Downs has that high ankle, so I'm not sure if he's going to play, but you still got Michael Pittman Jr. I'm looking for a high-scoring game, and I'm excited to see who comes out on top. I think it'll be the Texans, but we'll see.
We got some good games looking at this week. Dr. Reventure, game of the week. How you feeling?
This one for me is easy. It's Eagles Packers Friday night, Sao Paulo, Brazil. I understand as I was down in Brazil just about 10 days ago, giving some shoulder talks down to an incredible group of orthopedic surgeons down there. I'll tell you what, they told me they have all tried to get tickets, can't get them. Game sold out in less than a minute and a half, I understood. And we're talking two of these best young quarterbacks in the league. We got Jordan Love, Jalen Hurts. It's going to be electric down there and super fun game and a little bit of preview for the playoffs. It's going to happen.
Fantastic. You love to see football getting international, taking it out to Brazil, taking it out to Germany, really just pushing this beautiful sport onto the rest of the world because it's definitely worth seeing. I would say my game of the week this week, I'm going Jags Dolphins. You know, Miami might be the most talented team in the AFC right now, but they have struggled in big games with Tua. We got Trevor Lawrence going against Tua. That's going to be an absolute showdown. And as we can see from Vegas, they're saying it is the highest total of week 1 at 49.5. Kind of a dangerous game to touch if you're going to be gambling. But to be honest, I think it's going to be an absolutely explosive match. Everyone is looking for Miami to pull it out, do what they can, but the Jags are definitely looking to pull that upset and show that they got what it takes in Miami. Thanks for everyone listening. Health Matters Podcast, Episode 1, Season 24-25. Week 1 is absolutely huge in football and any other sport. You're either going to come out 0-1, you're going to come out 1-0. You got to start your season strong. You don't want to be in the background right now. You want to be able to have that championship mentality going through. So either start strong or it could be the end of your whole entire season. We got some great games, beautiful setups, amazing quarterbacks coming back. Let's see who can break through the injuries and make what happens, what needs to happen. And join us again next week.
Hoosier, Elvis, Greg, 58, go!